Welcome! NOAA has just released its 2019 December Global Climate Report, and this video summarizes that. I'm going to do the annual report separately a little time later. December of 2019 was the second warmest December on record. It was 1.05 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. The land temperature was 1.79 degrees centigrade above the average. Ocean was 0.77 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. The Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemispheres were also second warmest on record, with respectively 1.29 degrees centigrade and 0.79 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average. That makes it 419 consecutive months with temperatures above the 20th century average. Here is a map of how those temperatures are distributed. As you can see, there are several cool areas marked here with blue circles, particularly in northern Alaska and Canada. And then there are several very warm areas, eastern Canada, the United States, Central Europe and Australia. And over here we can see that there's a mixture of both red and blue, i.e. warm and cool, areas of ocean where El Nino normally forms. So we're still in El Nino, La Nina neutral conditions, or ENSO neutral conditions as it's more commonly known. The previous map doesn't actually tell us whether any of those temperatures were record warm or record cool. This map does. It's a percentiles map. On this map, dark blue indicates record cold temperatures and dark red indicates record warm temperatures. And you can see there are a large number of record warm temperatures, including most of Australia, the western Pacific Ocean, parts of Europe, and so on. We can also compare the number of record highs in the last month from individual stations, and we had an amazing 8,206 record highs compared with only 722 record lows. That's a ratio of over 11 to 1 in favor of record highs. For the year, we had 101,962 new record highs and 55,255 new record lows. That's a ratio of nearly 2 to 1 in favor of record highs. So once again, we can indicate we have a warming planet. As we have now the ranking for December being the second warmest December on record, I can fill out the matrix for 2019 in its entirety. And when you do that, 2019 became the second warmest year on record, and it only missed beating out 2016 by a couple of hundredths of degrees centigrade. So it was a very warm year, and it's quite amazing because this was basically an ENSO neutral year compared with the very, very strong El Nino that occurred in 2016, which again is another way of indicating that we have a warming planet. Now let's take a look at the upper atmosphere. We'll start with the lower troposphere, which has an average altitude of about 4 kilometers. And we get results from two groups, UAH and RSS. Both of them claim it was the warmest December on record. Both of them claim that it was the warmest December on record, and the average trend from the two groups is 0.15 degrees centigrade per decade, which is not horribly different from what the ground sensors get. Next we'll take a look at the mid-troposphere. That's somewhat higher, about 7 kilometers. Again, both groups made it the warmest December on record, and they have a trend for there with 0.1 degrees centigrade per decade. And it's not surprising that it gets slightly less warming as you go higher and higher in altitude. Lastly, the stratosphere. Now this is the odd one out because it is cooling. It was the 15th and 20th coolest December on record according to the two groups, and they have an average cooling rate of about 0.3 degrees centigrade per decade. Next, let's take a look at the northern hemisphere sea ice situation. In December, it was the 5th lowest December extent for Arctic ice, and the 22nd consecutive year with below average ice in the Arctic. Similarly, we take a look at the southern hemisphere. Here it was the 5th lowest on record and the 4th consecutive year with below average ice in the Antarctic. But what's the situation as far as carbon dioxide is concerned? In December, the average was 411 parts per million, compared with 409 parts per million last year. This is an increase of about 2.5 parts per million over the year, which means that probably we will never have the carbon dioxide drop below 410 parts per million in our lifetime. This will probably be the last year that it in fact dropped below 410 parts per million. As I said before, we're still in ENSO neutral conditions, and that's liable to continue all the way through the summer of this year, although there does seem to be a general downward trend. By the end of the year we might be looking at a La Nina. We'll have to take a look at that much later in the year. Let's take a look at the US climate for December. It was pretty much warm everywhere. It was 1.75 degrees centigrade above the 20th century average for the whole of the country. We had most of the country either above normal or well above normal, with some record temperatures set in southern Texas. As far as precipitation is concerned, we had about average precipitation for the month, with quite wet in the southeast and west and northeast, whereas the northwest and the Texas and Louisiana area had much drier than normal conditions. Tornadoes for the year ended up at 1,425 tornadoes. That's well above average, which is about 1,297 tornadoes in the year. And as you can see, most of the tornadoes we got were in May of last year. Overall summary then is that the pattern across the world was that there's a lot of very hot spots. There's in fact 8 areas indicated here with higher than average temperatures, and only half an area indicated with lower than average temperatures, and the sea ice was at very low extents in both hemispheres. So until next time, stay safe. Goodbye.